In this video, Ards Historical Society give an insight into some of the factories and industries which were so important to the economy and growth of the town. I am standing in front of what was the Ulster Print Works, one of the factories that was built during the 20th century. The building is no longer used for industrial purposes and is the only remaining factory building.
In 1959, I started after doing my junior certificate examination and started in the design shop. We did a 5-year apprenticeship. There were probably 3 people who did original design work that came in from an order from a customer who wanted a tea towel about New Zealand or about next year's calendar or about birds or about animals. It was all foremen in those days, or then they called them supervisors. There was a fantastic level of skill in a sense to get the job done, and the staff members, they got at one time a Christmas bonus was 1/3 of their salary. I started off in monthly salary, £12.50 a month, and I got the Christmas bonus at 1/3 of my salary, I think 2 years, and then it was cut to 10%.
My interest in the firm of George Walker and Company Limited comes to me through my father, who was called Harry Martin. He was a Newtownards man, born and bred, and he commenced work with the firm actually on St. Patrick's Day 1917 and worked there continuously until he retired in the autumn of 1968. In addition to being office manager, he was in charge of the sales end of the operation. He travelled to England, he travelled to Finland and Norway and places which one wouldn't have associated with purchasing things from the firm. Their customers were more or less, as I understand it, people like who made fishing nets, people who made probably shoes, and mattress makers, and it could have been used for weaving canvas, that sort of thing. Walkers were quite good to their staff, but of course nobody was terribly well paid, but they seemed to be a very happy bunch. Castle Gardens Primary School, it had been provided George Walker, the original George Walker, and the family continued to take an interest in it.
For almost 60 years, James McMeekin delivered milk to his customers in Newtownards. In 1981, however, he finally decided to call it a day.
Well, the film shows my father, who was a milkman, doing that final journey around the town. The milk was his life, his hobby, his everything. A jolly little man, and always had a joke, and everybody seemed to like him. He started 6:30. He was out on the road 6:30 most mornings, and he wasn't home to 6:30 most nights. His run would have been half the time if he didn't stop and talk to everybody. But I remember being out with him and he would say to me, "Pint to so-and-so, and don't forget to rap the door, and don't leave the door till somebody shouts they're up." So you would stood and rap the door, and you'd heard, "Yes, we're up." They all knew that he had to retire, and they were all sad then that this was going to be his final pint. It was the end of the Ashgrove dairies in Newtownards. The float lay in the yard for a long time, and we kept saying to him, "What are you going to do this?" "Oh no, that's my float. There's nothing being done with it." And we said, "Look, you're going to have to do something with it." No, that's my float." So I was talking to James one day, my brother, and he said, "Look, I wonder would Ulster Folk Park be interested in this?" And I rang them, and they were delighted.
How is it that we are in Northern Ireland, how we came Northern Ireland, and why we finished in Newtownards. We are very much our family associated with Weavers nearly from the beginning. We are Czechs originally, because when the communists took over and my father was put in jail for no particular reason, father quite correctly said that we have to go. But by then the Iron Curtain had descended, the border was closed, so to get out we had to walk virtually over the border and carrying what we could with some help, friends, and found ourselves in Germany. And then they helped us into Belgium, where we stayed without any idea what our next future will be. We couldn't get visas to get to UK. We were refugees without passports, and so it was a very difficult situation. Minister of Commerce in Belfast was looking for people to sort of invest and run new industries. Eventually, my father, speaking to the Minister of Commerce, a promise of visas for us from Belgium to go to Belfast, provided father had to promise he would run a business employing people, but the exception was nothing to do with flax or linen, because they had so much of it. So as a result, we are moving from Belgium to Belfast. Father found that the best equipment for the spinning, to improve it, was made by Mackie's of Belfast. So that was the other connection with Belfast.
Alexander Dixon and Son. Over the 20th century, several generations of the Dixon family bred and exhibited roses, winning gold medals and gaining worldwide fame. They opened their first shop in High Street, Newtownards, selling seeds, and by the middle of the century had a large shop in Royal Avenue, Belfast, and another in Dublin, where they sold their roses under the trade name Hallmark. In addition to exhibiting and selling roses throughout the United Kingdom and Ireland, Dixons exported them to America and Australia, where demand exceeded supply.
The history of this is that Buster Sussman, immediately after the war, he had connections with the directors of Marks and Spencer's, and he set up a business providing clothing to Marks and Spencer's. He sourced a lot of that from Northern Ireland. But he then decided he'd make more money if he could manufacture the clothes himself. So he wanted to set up a manufacturing business here. He set up a new company, which was Debretta.
Roger Monteith. I started in Debretta in 1970 and was there until 2000. In Newtownards there was various sites. There was the East Street factory, which had at its peak employed 240 people in the manufacture of blouses and skirts for Marks and Spencer's. The other factory in Newtownards was in West Street, which at its peak employed 150 people. There was a site in Bangor at the top of the Clandyboy Road, which at its peak employed 300 people. In addition to these sites, there was a factory in Portaferry. These factories were the early instigators of in-house nursery care and the drop-off and pick-up of school children to facilitate the housewife shifts in Bangor and Ards.
My name is David Hollinger. I was born in 1935. In 1951 I started an apprenticeship in Webb's linen weaving factory. There were two. There was the weaving factory and then there was the bleach green factory down below it. I had to work the 12th holidays along with Sam Brown to overhaul the big machine that ran the factory. As time went past in the factory, they started to upgrade the machinery. They were bringing in new looms which we had to put in, and these were all up to date and there was all electrical motors on them. Randall Webb, he was a great man for trying to invent things to improve the looms. 5 years. I've done a 5-year apprenticeship, and the money in the factory wasn't really brilliant. And this was the time that Berkshire started Newtownards, and they were paying about twice the wage, and I got a job in Berkshire.
Berkshire, an American company manufacturing ladies' nylon stockings, opened a factory in 1947 off the Dunhoodie Road in Newtownards. At its peak, the factory employed more than 750 local men and women and was Berkshire's largest factory outside the United States.
Well, the tights was coming in then. They did a lot of work for Marks and Spencer's too. But very, very fine work. I wasn't so keen on the fine work. I preferred doing the other work. But a lot of people, I've still friends who worked in the Berkshire for years.
Such was the demand for Berkshire stockings, a second factory was opened in Dundonald. However, by the 1980s, ladies' fashion had changed to a more casual wear, and declining sales saw the closure of the factory.
I left the Ulster Print Works and I went to Black's sock factory. And it was a type of job you had to go in there at 6 o'clock in the morning, 6 to 2, 2 to 10. There was ladies there that had been there for years and years, and they were doing the knitting. And then I was a cutter. I came and cut the socks out and separated them and things like that. It was a nice job. I liked it all right, but you couldn't have spoke, out or anything, But I liked it. And as I say, it was a big place. Again, my mother was there too, but she worked way down in the back where they would have put the socks out, and checked them and all to make sure that they were all right and all, But it was very good. Enjoyed it. The word came around that they were going to close down. Yes, that's right. But they didn't sack everybody off or put everybody out. No. What happened was the whole thing moved up into the Berkshire.
During the 1920s and early 30s, aviation technology had advanced to a stage where a number of airline companies were establishing a pattern of regular air services between Northern Ireland and Great Britain, and in that there was a growing need for a dedicated civil airport in the province. However, some flying did take place in a field behind the Temple of the Winds on the Lord Londonderry's estate at Mount Stewart. A solution was offered in 1933 when the 7th Marquess of Londonderry, himself an enthusiastic aviator and at that time Secretary of State for Air, announced his intention to construct an aerodrome on a 50-acre portion of his estate adjacent to the road from Newtownards to Cumber. Construction of the first airport in Ulster, and indeed the first purpose-built airport on the island of Ireland, was contracted to Messrs Airworks Limited, Heston, England. On the 31st of August 1934, the new Ards airport was officially opened by the Duke of Abercorn, Governor of Northern Ireland. 1943, aviation took a new turn in Northern Ireland with the establishment of a new aircraft factory. This time it was Miles Aircraft Company, with its headquarters in Woodley, South England, who were seeking permission to expand their production line of a small single-engine communications type aircraft called the Miles Messenger. Miles management began to press the Northern Ireland government to provide necessary facilities for a large-scale light aircraft production at Newtownards site. In 1946, permission was given and a new purpose-built factory on the Cumber Road adjacent to the airfield was opened. 69 aircraft were built at Newtownards, test flown and delivered to Woodley. Post-war austerity brought aircraft production to a close in December 1947.
Every club has a 19th hole, and here at Bovey it serves coffee with Newtownards mini pot creamers. A reminder that the factory has produced around 2 million of these pots since I set up the line back in 1980. Yes, that's 5 a head per year, spread over the whole world's population. And it doesn't even take account of the 100+ other product lines made in the factory and also shipped all over the world. It's nearly 70 years since my father Dick Laws travelled to the province here in search of a place to manufacture his novel preserved food products. He was in a hurry to develop his ideas before anyone else thought of them. He could see the value in skim milk, which was then a waste product being fed to pigs. These days, the skim part of cow's milk is worth more than the cream. On his visit to Belfast 70 years ago, Dad met Brian Faulkner, then Minister of Commerce. He was shown a disused jam factory in Kiltonga, Newtownards. It was all Nissen huts, but there was plenty of room inside for what he wanted, plus fields outside for future expansion. So the deal was done.